Hermes never really has a shortage of any bags. I think it's more about how much of it they want to release. Hey guys, my name is G.P.S and welcome back. Today we're finally getting around to doing part 2 of my Hermes Q&A, answering more of your amazing questions that you sent me over on Instagram a while ago. And in case you have no idea what I'm talking about, make sure to link part 1 in the info box, in which we addressed so many popular Hermes questions, like how much you truly need to spend to score your first Birkin from the boutique. And we have a lot more to go through. So what I'm going to try to do is pick questions that I see come up over and over again. But one topic that I am sure we'll be touching on is whether it's easier to score your first bag or your second and third, because that is a question that I received at least 10 times. So if you want to chat about everything Hermes, then please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and keep on watching. Okay, let's start with some quick warm-up questions. And as always, my answers will be based on my first-hand experience of loving, admiring, and buying Hermes pieces for many years. And of course, everything that I picked up and learned along the way from incredible people working for the brand. But let's start with this question, which is top 5 dark colors apart from black for Birkin and Kelly. So top 5 dark colors other than black. So I would probably say Blue Nuit. Blue Nuit is a beautiful, dark, deep navy shade. It's absolutely stunning. Prunus Noir is also a really nice shade of blue. It definitely leans a little bit more purple. And I don't think Prunus Noir is currently being offered for regular leathers. I've only really been seeing it in exotic skins recently. But let's hope it will come back in regular leathers as well at one point. Vert Cypress is another color that I quite like, which is in the green family. And then I would probably say Bordeaux. Bordeaux is obviously a red. That's a beautiful dark shade as well. And I know you ask for colors that are not black, but I would do you a disservice if I didn't mention Noir, which is Hermes' most beautiful shade in my humble opinion. Discontinued Hermes bags. So when it comes to discontinued Hermes bags, obviously there is a lot that is currently sitting in the Hermes archives. But Hermes is kind of notorious for bringing old designs back, so by the time you start sort of missing something and you stop seeing it on social media and on reseller accounts, Hermes pretty much is ready to bring it back. So if you're wondering about my favorite discontinued Hermes bag, that's a tough one. I think I like the Teddy design, which should be coming back towards the end of the year. And then maybe the Hermes Birkin that was around at the beginning of the early 2010s. That was a pretty cool design. It wasn't something that I was actively seeking or something that I would try to hunt down. But if I'm trying to think about something that that was pretty cool at the time it launched, I think the Hermes Birkin was a really cool design. Would you get a bag in Swift leather? The short answer is no, I wouldn't. Obviously, never say never. So if there was a design that was exclusively available in Swift, and I absolutely love the design and I felt that the leather goes with the structure, I probably wouldn't turn it down. But if it's a bag that is available in other leathers, Swift would probably be my last choice. So never say never, but it's definitely not a leather that I would go for. And in case you want to find out why, I'll have a video link down below, which is my ultimate Hermes leather guide, where I talk about some of my most and least favorite leathers, and Swift is mentioned in that video, so no, it's very unlikely that I would go for a Swift bag. Is there a shortage of quota bags right now? So obviously I don't work for Hermes, so take whatever I say with a grain of salt. But the way I look at this question, and based on what I have been hearing, seeing, and experiencing, is that Hermes never really has a shortage of any bags. I think it's more about how much of it they want to release and exactly what you're looking for. Because when it comes to just bags in general, I have no doubt that they always have more than enough to go around. And I really don't think that it's even up to the boutiques and the person you shop with what they can bring out from the back or what they even have in the back. I think it really comes down to the strategic decisions of the corporate office in terms of how much of it they want to release and distribute to even the boutiques. I really think that it's more about that than what they have in the back and whether there is a shortage. I personally don't think that there is ever a shortage of these bags. The question is how much of it the corporate office really wants to release. And what I think has changed, however, is the allocation of these pieces and where these pieces get released to. Because I have heard from several friends and I've seen it myself that there are certain regions that have had more lenient and less restrictions that I felt received much larger shipments, because I have friends who have been offered their dream bags in the past year in regions where it would have been so much more difficult to get your dream bag with the exact specs that you're looking for. So I don't really think that there's a shortage per se. I think it's just the allocation that has changed quite a bit. What's the best way to see what Kelly options are available? Which I think is a great question, because one of the biggest barriers of not only buying an Hermes bag, but also even just requesting one, is that you're kind of requesting a bag blindly. Obviously, when you request a bag and it comes in and it gets offered to you, you get to have a look at it, obviously. But you usually only have, maybe like 10 to 30 minutes to make up your mind and decide whether you want to drop all this money on a bag, because that's really all the time that you have available to look at the bag that you have requested and play around with it. So I think it's always good to be prepared. The best thing that you can probably do is ask your home store if they have any bags to show you, if they have any samples. Some stores do have a couple of samples. They won't have samples of each and every single size, but they usually have one or two available, especially if you shop at a larger store. And then you can always ask if they have any bags to show you, just so you can get an understanding of the size, the leathers, or the colors. The leathers and the colors are usually easier because they can show you swatches. But when it comes to the actual bag, usually the reason why they can't bring a bag out from the back, even just to show you, is because the bags that they have available have usually been pre-sold or pre-promised for someone who's been on the wait list. And I don't think they like opening bags that are going to someone else. When I get a bag, I like it to be revealed to me from a sealed box, so I completely understand why they wouldn't be opening bags. And then something else that I feel would be quite beneficial for you to see if you're just kind of testing the waters of Hermes is to maybe go to a reseller or a consignment store in your area, a store that stocks a large amount of bags for you to look at and play around with, because I feel it's really when you truly get a feel and you get to touch these pieces is when you get an idea of what they're going to look like on you, how they're going to behave and act, and whether you're going to like them at the end of the day. So I think going to a consignment store, something like the Real or Rebag, could be really beneficial for you to get an idea of what you're really buying at the end of the day. The next question is about the Hermes Podium event and what it really is. And I think it's a great question because podium is a term that is really often thrown around, but I don't think it's explained often enough. So let's talk about it. So basically the podium event is what I would call almost a buying conference that used to take place in Paris right after the fashion show twice a year, that every single store director and store manager was able to attend to basically place an order for every single piece, or I should say almost every single piece, that will be stocked in their individual stores. So when you walk into your home store and you see things on display, pretty much every single thing was purchased at the podium event specifically for your store by the store manager or the store director. But that's basically everything that you have to know about the podium. It's the place where store managers and directors decide what's going to be stocked at your home store. And it's interesting because I think it's a genius business practice that not many or not enough companies are implementing. Another fashion house that I know of that does something quite similar is Zara, out of all places. They also believe that a lot of power should be given to the people leading the store, which to me just makes perfect sense. Because at the end of the day, who else knows their store, their local clientele, and their taste better than the people running these places? So I think it's just absolutely genius that Hermes does this. And the reason why I was talking in past tense is because of everything going on in the world. I believe Podium last year was moved online, but hopefully once things start going back to normal, Podium will also go on as this big event in Paris twice a year. So that's basically what it is. Store managers and directors from all over the world fly to Paris to decide what's going to be carried at your home store. And then one more thing that is worth mentioning is that if you have a long-standing loyal relationship with not only the brand but also with a certain store, sometimes they also offer you the chance to place order for ready-to-wear fine jewelry, small leather goods, and even in some cases bags from the upcoming season. So you can basically put in a request with the person that you work with, and in some cases the store manager or director will be able to place an order on your behalf at the Podium event. And even though those pieces will not be made for you as they would be if they were a special order, as soon as they come in and they hit the store manager will know that they should go to you because they were purchased on your behalf or at least for you. So it's something that is worth keeping in mind, that if you have a long-standing relationship, it is something that can be offered, but you do have to shop at a certain store for a long while because each store has quite a limited budget that they can spend at this event. It's not like they can buy whatever they want. They have a set budget that they need to stick to, so they can be buying pieces for every single client, because if you don't go back, if you move, if you decide that you no longer want that piece and you change your mind, they are at the end of the day stuck with those pieces. And yes, they can sell them to other people, but when they could have spent that money on something that they felt would have been more popular, of course it's better for the boutique to do that. So it's definitely something that they don't do on a regular basis, but if you get a chance to do it, I highly recommend taking advantage of it. And if there is something that you've always wanted, maybe a wallet in a certain color or a piece of ready-to-wear from the upcoming collection, it's definitely the best way for you to get your hands on those pieces. How did you get into Hermes and why? And the reason is actually my dad. My dad has always loved, as far as I can remember, Hermes ties. So every time we would travel somewhere, we would look at Hermes ties together. And my dad wouldn't buy a tie every single time, but it was kind of our thing, and that's how I kind of grew up with Hermes. And I think how it started is that we were watching, I must have been like 6 or 7, but I still remember this clearly. We were watching some sort of an old school rom-com, like maybe something like Serendipity. And there's a scene of the main character going to a department store, and he's standing in front of this Hermes tie display, and we started talking with my dad about ties and his love for ties. And from that point on, every time we were in a city that had an Hermes, we stopped by to look at their ties. And that's really how it started, and it just kind of stuck. It obviously wasn't until many moons later that I started buying Hermes for myself, but I've been admiring and I've known of the brand ever since, and that's how my personal Hermes journey started. Could you tell me more about Chevre leather? I know it's not a leather you prefer. Why? Yes, you're 100% correct. Chevre is not my preferred leather. But Chevre is basically a collective term that refers to different types of leathers, all made of goat skin. And even though there are subtle differences between each one, there are sort of general characteristics that they all share. So Chevre leathers are known for being extremely lightweight, which makes them great for bags and small leather goods. They all have artificial grains to them. A lot of people don't know this, but actually the grains that you see on Chevre leather, they tend to be artificial. They basically go through this process before they go into tanning that creates these artificial asymmetrical grains in the leather. On some types of Chevre, they're more noticeable than they are on other. And they also have a pretty dominant sheen to them. Again, some Chevre leathers are more matte than others, but most of them have a pretty visible sheen to them. And I'm going to get ahead of myself and answer your question why I personally don't like Chevre, which is exactly because of that superficial, greasy, shiny finish that it has. Every time I think about touching Chevre leather, I immediately want to wash my hands because it almost makes me feel that it will leave my hands dirty, that it will have this greasy oil slick feel to it. And even though it doesn't leave anything on your hands if you touch the bag, that's just what I associate the leather with, so it's not something that I would go for. Even though it has quite a few pros, it is lightweight and it is pretty scratch resistant because of the artificial grains. It's just not something that I would personally go for. But I have to say that every time I talk to craftsmen and people who are extremely knowledgeable on the brand, they always say how much they enjoy working with Chevre leathers because they're quite adaptable. They're extremely soft and supple leathers, so they can really take up on guidance. They don't have a mind of their own. They're not rigid, so they won't start cracking and turning inside out. If you want to build it into a structure, it will really take up on that shape. And that's why it makes some beautiful bags when they use Chevre leather. But it does need support and structure, because if you look at features on bags like a Kelly Cellier, you'll notice that Chevre bags tend to age quite well, especially if you take good care of them. But certain features will age much more rapidly than the bag itself. Features that don't have enough support. So often if you look at a Chevre bag that is being sold pre-loved, or if it's an older piece, you will see that the sangles, for example, look much older usually than the bag itself, because sangles are not obviously as structured as the body of the bag is. So if they don't have enough structure, and if you don't use them in the right way, if you don't attach them to the twist closure every single time and you just leave them hanging, because the leather is so soft and supple, gravity will continue working on it even after the craftsman is done, and it will start almost pulling and dragging the sangles down. It almost reminds me of chewing gum. If you take a piece of chewing gum and you start pulling it apart as it becomes thinner and just stretches out, that's kind of what the sangles on Chevre bags can start looking like. If you don't close them every single time, they can just start pulling and dragging and drooping down, which is not my preferred look. But if you're not really bothered by those details, or if you're buying a bag that just doesn't have as many moving pieces, I actually think that Chevre leathers are not the worst leathers to go for. But for me personally, that high shine finish with the artificial grains, but the fact that the leather still looks kind of smooth, just gives me this slimy, almost snail-like feel that I just don't enjoy the look of. And then the last question we have time for is one that I actually received in different shapes and forms. I'm not kidding you, probably 10 times, which all had to do with getting your first Birkin versus getting your second, third, and fourth. My thoughts, my experience, and just what the process really looks like. And I obviously can't speak from my personal experience and from the experience of my close friends that I actually witnessed. And I think that getting your first bag is the most difficult, and it might just be a psychological thing that once you received your first offer, you kind of understand that it's not an impossible mission, it's something that can be achieved. But I felt that after my first bag, the rest of them were almost like, honestly, child's play, because you know what you're doing, you know it's possible, you're more familiar with the process of requesting a bag, what it's going to look like getting offered a bag, what you have to pay attention to, what are the kind of things that you like and don't like, because you do have a piece that you can personally test and trial at home. So I really think that it's the first one that's the most difficult to get. Now, when I started buying Hermes bags, they still had, I think it was at the beginning of their quota system, which meant that you could get a bag, one bag, either a Birkin or a Kelly, between the month of January to June, and then you could request and be offered another bag between the month of July to December. So it was pretty easy for me because I had, a set timeline on when I'm going to be receiving my bags, or when I can even request a bag. Obviously, it's not guaranteed that you will be offered a bag within that 6-month period, but you know that if you get offered one, you can actually buy one. So for me, I felt that the first one was the most difficult. Just mainly psychologically, it wasn't about the experience that was difficult, but I felt that that was the one that I was most anxious about. I think my first bag, which was a Birkin 40, I waited for about 4 to 5 months for, and then the rest afterwards usually were only just a few months of wait, with a couple of exceptions. But I felt it was pretty easy. Obviously, the fact that you can walk into a store with a piece of theirs gives you a little bit more confidence, and you will be taken more seriously. I would obviously suggest that you continue shopping with the same store. You're not only about bags, but if you get one bag, continue shopping with the same store, and if you ever want another bag, I think it will definitely be easier to submit a request with the exact same boutique. So nowadays the system is slightly different. Now you don't have to wait between January to June to get one bag and from July to December to get another. In the US, the current process, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be the process across the world at one point, is that you can get 2 bags anytime within 1 year, but you can get a bag, one in January, another in February, one in January, or another in August. As long as you get it within the same year, you can get 2 bags. And when I'm talking about bags, I'm talking about Birkins and Kellys. Kelly pochettes, Kelly cots, Constances are not considered quota bags unless they are made of exotic skin, because most stores will consider them a quota bag if they are made of exotic skin. So that's just something for you to keep in mind. And when it comes to spending, I got a lot of questions about spending. Do I have to spend the same amount of money for my second bag that I did for my first? And the reason why I really cannot answer that question is because I never tried to spend money just so I can get a bag. I never had the strategy or the idea that I'm going to spend the bare minimum just so I can be offered the bag. So I wouldn't really think about it like that. As I mentioned in my previous video, I would recommend that you pick up pieces that you like, that you enjoy, explore as much of the brand as you possibly can and as much of it as you're interested in. And don't think that, oh, I spent this much money for this bag, so I have to spend this much for my second. Because based on my experience, that's really not how it works. I feel that the second bag will be easier to get. What I would recommend is that you don't immediately submit a request for your second bag as soon as you got your first one. Get your first one, enjoy it, see what else Hermes has to offer, and when you feel that the timing is right, put in a request for your second bag. And this concludes part 2 of the Hermes Q&A. I hope you guys found this video helpful. And if you'd want me to do a part 3, do let me know. Give this video a thumbs up if that's something that you'd be interested in, and we can absolutely make this more of a regular thing. And if you have any questions, do let me know in the comment section. And I would also love to know if you had a similar experience to mine, or perhaps when it comes to the questions, you had a completely different experience, in which case I would love to know. So be sure to let us know in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video, then please be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.